the Galactic Empire transmitted a live broadcast across every human device showing fleets of alien warships hovering over a vast human colony and unleashing devastation. The moment the signal appeared across Earth, no one could escape it. The image forced itself onto every screen, from the smallest wrist communicator to the grandest city hall. Billboard, families gathered in living rooms, workers paused on factory floors, students stopped mid-sentence in classrooms, all drawn into the same shared horror as the scene unfolded before them. Above, a colony world on the edge of the Orion, an armada of alien ships filled the sky, black silhouettes cutting across the stars, their hulls glowing with a sinister crimson light. The sight alone sent chills through billions of human viewers on Earth, because they understood at once this was no secret operation. This was no hidden massacre. The Empire wanted every human eye to seethe. First blasts rained down beams of searing energy that tore through towers and plazas and homes. Entire blocks vanished in flashes of white fire. Millions cried out in shock as the feed captured the screams of the colony citizens, running for shelter that never existed in the face of such overwhelming force. The sound of collapsing steel and the thunder of firestorms carried across the broadcast, making every person on Earth feel as though they stood among the dying parents. Covered the eyes of children, though the images still burned through their minds. Friends clutched one another, unable to look away, while soldiers watching from distant bases clenched their fists and cursed their helplessness. The feeling of paralysis spread faster than the fire, as billions realized the Empire had staged this, not just to kill but to humiliate, to strip away hope itself. And yet the broadcast did not stop. It shifted angles as if countless drones and satellites had been positioned to record every instant. One showed a sea of terrified faces lit by the glow of destruction. Another revealed the alien commanders aboard their flagships watching in cold silence, their reptilian eyes fixed on the devastation as if it were nothing more than a routine exercise. The death toll climbed higher with every passing second. Entire districts flattened, entire generations erased in minutes. When the number finally reached 99 million, the transmission pulsed with red symbols flashing the figure across every human device, a cruel announcement of triumph, a declaration of superiority meant to carve terror into the hearts of the survivors. But the result was not simple fear on Earth. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound of the destruction itself. It was the silence of grief turning into fury. In cities across the planet, people emerged into the streets, crying, shouting, demanding answers. Governments scrambled to contain the shock, but the people would not be contained. They had seen their kin murdered in real time, and they would never forget it. The Galactic Empire thought the broadcast would weaken humanity, but instead it lit a spark, one that would soon grow into a fire powerful enough to reach the stars. 99 million humans perished as the alien forces reduced entire cities to dust, leaving survivors on Earth in shock and horror at the public execution of their kin. The broadcast replayed itself in endless loops across every corner of the planet. Satellites ensured no one could block the signal, even when officials tried to shut it down. The Empire overrode their systems as if mocking their efforts. Whole metropolises on Earth became silent audiences, staring into glowing screens where the deaths of their fellow humans were being displayed again and again. On the colony world, the once bright skyline collapsed into firestorms. Neighborhoods turned into smoldering wastelands with nothing left but ash. The sight of mothers clutching their children before being swallowed by flames burned itself into the memories of every human who watched. Students in classrooms froze, their teachers unable to speak. Workers in mines dropped their tools as the screams of millions filled the airwaves. Soldiers on distant bases looked on with rage and despair, some slamming their fists into steel tables, others bowing their heads in sorrow. For the Galactic Empire, it was a demonstration not merely of firepower but of control. They wanted humanity to understand that life itself could be taken from them at any moment. They wanted humans to bow in submission, to feel hopeless and weak in the shadow of an unstoppable force. Yet, the cruelty of the act only deepened the wounds of grief and fury that spread across Earth like wildfire. Entire families gathered in homes, staring at the images in silence, then breaking down in tears as the death count flashed across the screen. Strangers in the streets embraced each other, sobbing though they had never met, bound by the shared loss of their kind. Leaders attempted to calm their nations, but the words of politicians seemed hollow when compared to the reality that had just unfolded across the stars. Scientists tracked the energy signatures of the alien weapons, calculating how long it would take for the same devastation to reach Earth. Military officers whispered among themselves about the implications while intelligence agencies scrambled to understand why the Empire chose this particular colony and why they broadcasted it so openly. But the ordinary people did not care for reasons. All they saw was genocide. As the flames consumed the colony, the survivors on Earth were consumed by something else, a terrible knowledge that no one was safe, and that their future would either be submission or defiance. Whispers of vengeance began to spread among the citizens, from crowded slums to gleaming skyscrapers. The talk of resistance carried a dangerous heat. When the final building fell and the smoke covered the ruins, the broadcast ended, leaving only the number 99 million glowing in the void of every screen. The silence that followed was louder than any explosion. It was the sound of humanity standing at the edge of despair. World governments gathered in secret councils to debate the meaning of the broadcast, realizing it was both a warning and a challenge from the Galactic Empire. In the aftermath of the massacre, leaders from every major nation were summoned into underground chambers where no cameras or microphones were permitted. The air in those rooms was heavy with fear, yet also with anger. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists sat at long steel tables staring at the replay of the broadcast that had shattered their world. No one spoke for several minutes because the scale of the destruction was too vast for words. When the silence broke, it was with accusations. Some leaders blamed others for failing to prepare for the inevitability of alien hostility. Others argued that humanity was still too divided to respond as one. Nation after nation spoke, until the council dissolved into chaos. Voices, rising fists slamming on tables, desperation seeping into every corner of the chamber. But amid the shouting, one truth became impossible to ignore. The broadcast was not random. It was carefully orchestrated. The Empire had chosen a human colony, deliberately destroyed it, and ensured the footage reached Earth instantly. It was not just an attack. It was theater, a message carved in blood across the stars. The meaning was clear: submit or perish. Intelligence directors presented analysis showing that the Empire had monitored human communication for decades, studying their languages, their cultures, their fears. The attack was designed with precision to strike at the soul of humanity by turning grief into paralysis. Yet the very precision also revealed arrogance, the belief that humans would collapse rather than resist. Military leaders stood and declared that a line had been crossed. They spoke of contingency plans buried deep within classified archives. Projects once dismissed as paranoia suddenly dragged into the light. Some generals demanded immediate retaliation. Others warned that humanity lacked the firepower to face such an enemy head on. The debate grew more bitter with each passing hour until the council teetered on collapse. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, the world seethed. Millions marched through streets carrying banners of mourning and vengeance, demanding that their leaders act. People chanted in unison for justice for the fallen, their voices echoing across capitals and spaceports. The governments could not ignore the cries of their people for long. The pressure mounted with every day of inaction. Back within the council, some voices argued for surrender to spare Earth from the fate of the colony. Yet those suggestions were drowned out by outrage. Humanity had watched 99 million perish. Live there. Screams etched into the collective memory. Surrender was no longer a choice that any leader dared to speak aloud without facing condemnation. By the end of the council, the conclusion was clear. The broadcast was not just a tragedy, it was a declaration of war, and humanity would have to answer. The Galactic Empire had intended to terrify, but instead they had unified a fractured species under a single purpose: survival through resistance. The decision was made, the plans were set into motion, and for the first time in history the world prepared to act not as nations, but as one people, staring into the abyss and daring to fight back. Ordinary citizens demanded justice, their grief and anger uniting nations that had long been divided by borders, politics, and conflicts. On the streets of every city, from the towering skylines of megacities to the quiet villages of the countryside, humanity rose in protest. The images of the massacre looped endlessly on every device, fueling the rage of the people. No matter where they lived, men, women, and children poured into the streets, carrying homemade signs painted with the words "never again" and "vengeance for the fallen." The mourning that had gripped them in silence transformed into a roar that could no longer be ignored. In capitals around the globe, leaders looked out from their palaces and government towers to see seas of people flooding the avenues, the chants of millions echoing through the night. Candles lit in honor of the dead mixed with the blazing fires of anger. People who once argued over politics, religion, and race now stood side by side, their differences erased. By shared grief, the Galactic Empire had done what centuries of diplomacy had failed to achieve. They had united humanity under a single cause. Families of the victims from the colony were interviewed live, their faces pale with sorrow, yet filled with steel determination. Mothers spoke of children lost. Fathers described the last calls received before communication went dark. Their words, broadcast across Earth, cut through every heart. They reminded the world that those 99 million were not numbers. They were people with names and dreams and futures stolen in an instant. The cries for justice became too loud to ignore. Students refused to attend classes, demanding action. Instead, workers went on strike, forcing industries to grind to a halt unless their governments promised retaliation. Entire sectors of the economy paused, not out of greed but out of rage. People decided that no trade, no labor, and no routine life could continue until humanity had answered the slaughter. In small towns, militias formed spontaneously, citizens training themselves with old weapons in case the aliens came to their skies. Rumors spread of hackers breaking into government systems, trying to push leaders into declaring war. Though many of these rumors could not be proven, they captured the restless energy of a population unwilling to wait any longer. The media fueled the movement with every broadcast. Reporters spoke not only of destruction but of unity. They reminded humanity that history had never seen such a moment. Billions standing together across the planet, demanding the same thing: justice, vengeance, survival for the species itself. Commentators who once thrived on division now spoke of solidarity, as though the lines that had separated humanity for centuries were dissolving overnight. The Galactic Empire had tried to humiliate humanity with their live execution of a colony, yet the effect was the opposite. Instead of breaking spirits, they had forged a new one, a spirit of collective defiance and fury strong enough to echo across the stars. The leaders of Earth knew then that hesitation would tear them from power. They understood that, in the eyes of their people, there could be no compromise, no surrender, only resistance. The chants outside their palaces grew louder until they shook the walls themselves. And so the voice of humanity rose as one voice of mourning, transformed into a cry of war, and no force in the galaxy could silence it now. Military leaders revealed long-prepared contingency plans codenamed Operation Alien Extinct, a strategy meant to retaliate against any extraterrestrial aggression. The decision came after days of furious debate. When the Council of Nations reached its breaking point, the pressure from the people was unrelenting, and the weight of 99 million lives demanded a response from the depths of classified archives. Generals unlocked files that had been hidden for decades, projects spoken of only in whispers and dismissed by most as paranoia or fantasy. The existence of those plans shocked even some of the highest-ranking officials who had never been granted access before. The room fell silent as the lead commander stepped forward. With a steel case within it were the documents, blueprints and strategies for Operation Alien Extinct, a program designed for the unthinkable, the possibility of open war with a civilization beyond Earth. The very name of the plan carried a weight that froze the air. The generals had not chosen it lightly. It was meant as a promise that if any alien power sought to erase humanity, humanity would fight to erase them first. The plan was immense in scope. It called for the rapid unification of Earth's militaries into a single coordinated force. No more fragmented armies of rival nations, but a planetary defense network with command structures designed to cross borders and override politics. It outlined weapons projects so advanced that many had been mothballed for fear of public backlash, or cost antimatter warheads, particle lances, rail cannons, capable of piercing starship hulls, swarms of autonomous drones that could overwhelm fleets. There were also proposals for massive starships, each the size of floating cities, to serve as carriers and fortresses in deep space. Engineers who had studied alien transmissions were tasked with reverse engineering fragments of their technology to close the gap within years rather than centuries. Scientists who once dreamed of peaceful exploration were now recruited to build weapons powerful enough to rival the Empire itself. The generals explained that the program had been dismissed in the past because of cost and because humanity had not yet faced a clear existential threat. But now the justification was written in fire across the ruins of the colony: 99 million reasons to awaken the plan, and make it real. Reactions within the council were divided. Some feared that provoking the Empire further would bring immediate annihilation. Others argued that inaction was already a death sentence. But when the generals revealed simulations of potential invasions, scenarios showing Earth falling within weeks without preparation, even the most hesitant leaders saw the truth. Survival required defiance. The announcement of Operation Alien Extinct was not made public immediately, but rumors spread quickly through military circles and leaked onto the networks within hours. The people seized on the phrase and transformed it into a rallying cry. Chants of alien extinct echoed in city squares, and recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers willing to fight no matter the cost. For the first time in history, Earth possessed not only the will, but the framework for a united war machine, one designed to face the stars themselves. The generals closed the case and looked around the chamber. They knew there was no turning back. The moment the plan was revealed, the war had already begun. Scientists and engineers raced against time, developing advanced weapons, starships, and cyber defenses capable of countering the superior alien technology. Across Earth, laboratories that once focused on medicine, energy, and exploration were converted into war factories. Research hubs became command centers, where the brightest minds of the species gathered under one banner: humanity's survival. The urgency of the mission meant no field was left untouched, from particle physics to artificial intelligence. From aerospace engineering to genetics, every discipline was thrown into the furnace of necessitines. Of engineers worked without sleep inside vast underground hangars, designing starships that could withstand the unimaginable power of alien weapons. Each ship blueprint was drawn and redrawn until flaws vanished. Their frames reinforced with alloys stronger than any material previously forged. Scientists experimented with fusion cores to provide limitless energy to these new vessels, while propulsion specialists tested drives that could leap across light years faster than anything humanity had ever conceived. Weapon laboratories became crucibles of desperate innovation. Antimatter warheads were perfected with terrifying speed. Rail cannons, longer than skyscrapers, were built to pierce starship armor. Plasma lances, capable of cutting through entire fleets, were refined in secret bunkers. Even space itself was weaponized, with automated defense grids orbiting the planet like a second skin, designed to intercept incoming fleets before they reached the atmosphere. Cyber warfare became just as critical as firepower. Hackers, once criminals now recruited as soldiers, were tasked with creating systems to infiltrate alien code. Artificial intelligences were unleashed in virtual battlefields, clashing against simulations of alien networks. Thousands of programs sacrificed in digital combat until the survivors evolved into weapons sharper than any sword. The goal was not only to defend human systems, but to cripple the Empire from within, turning their vast technology into their greatest weakness. Medical scientists also joined the cause, designing treatments for radiation burns, developing exosuits to amplify the strength and endurance of soldiers, creating nanomachines to repair wounds within minutes. The battlefield of tomorrow would not only demand firepower but resilience to endure horrors that no human army had ever faced before. Every factory on Earth shifted production lines. Civilian industries retooled for war. Car plants produced armored transports. Shipyards, once meant for trade vessels, became the birthplace of warships. Even space elevators were transformed into military supply chains, ferrying weapons and materials into orbit at unprecedented speed. The sense of urgency was not only in the laboratories, it was in the air of every city. Workers labored day and night, without complaint, driven by the knowledge that the Empire would return, and when they did, Earth had to be ready. People who once built machines for comfort now forged instruments of survival. Their hands blistered, their eyes bloodshot, but their spirits unbroken. The Galactic Empire believed they had shown their dominance, yet their broadcast ignited a wave of human innovation unlike anything in history. Each breakthrough, each weapon, each starship was built with the memory of 99 million souls carved into its design. Humanity was racing not only to fight but to avenge, and as the first prototype warships left the atmosphere, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight for all of Earth to see, the people watching below felt for the first time not despair but hope. Soldiers from across Earth volunteered in unprecedented numbers, training for a war that would determine the survival of humanity as a species. Recruitment centers overflowed as men and women from every corner of the planet lined up to enlist. Many carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and the fire in their hearts. Former rival nations now stood shoulder to shoulder as their people offered their lives willingly for a war that none of them had ever imagined fighting veterans from old conflicts returned to service while teenagers, barely grown, swore oaths with trembling hands, yet unshaken voices. Training grounds expanded overnight, entire cities converted into barracks fields, transformed into obstacle courses, orbital stations, redesigned into academies for space warfare. The sound of boots striking pavement became the heartbeat of Earth. Every dawn soldiers rose as one, running, drilling and shouting their chants, echoing through valleys and streets, their determination visible in every drop of sweat. The training was grueling beyond anything seen before. Recruits were pushed to their limits, carrying heavy X-suits designed to withstand alien gravity, fighting in simulated zero-gravity arenas, learning to maneuver in starship corridors where battles would rage in silence, broken only by the clash of weapons. Combat instructors, hardened by decades of service, drove them relentlessly, their words harsh, their methods brutal, yet every soldier endured because they knew the alternative was extinction. In virtual reality chambers, recruits faced simulations of alien forces, holograms that mirrored the reptilian forms of the Empire soldiers, the fear in their eyes replaced by fury as they cut down the digital enemies again and again. Each failure taught them new strategies, each victory sharpened their resolve. Psychological conditioning prepared them for the horrors of war, for the screams, the fire, the silence of space, where one mistake could mean the end of a squad. Special units emerged from the ranks, men and women chosen for their strength, their speed, their brilliance, and their courage. They were trained with experimental weapons, rail rifles, plasma blades, drone swarms that followed their every command. These units became the legends of the camps, whispered about with awe by recruits who dreamed of joining their ranks. One day yet, the heart of the army was not only in its elite but in its unity. Soldiers who once spoke different languages learned to fight as one, their chants blending into a single voice, their loyalty no longer to a nation but to humanity itself. In the mess halls they shared stories of families lost on the colony, their grief binding them into unbreakable bonds. When one soldier faltered, another lifted them. When despair threatened to take hold, the memory of 99 million gave them strengthened. As days turned to weeks and weeks into months, Earth watched with pride. Parades of armored troops marched through cities before boarding starships, their faces solemn yet unafraid. Families cheered for them though tears filled their eyes. Mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters, all knowing the cost that would soon be paid. The Galactic Empire had broadcast death to instill fear, but what rose from the ashes was an army unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, forged by sorrow, driven by fury, and united by the promise that humanity would never again be slaughtered without resistance. As Earth launched its fleets into orbit, millions watched the departure, live their tears and hope, blending into a shared determination to avenge the death. The day of the launch arrived with a silence that blanketed the planet. Even the winds seemed to pause as humanity held its breath. Across continents, people gathered in open fields, on rooftops, near spaceports, their eyes fixed on the sky. Entire cities emptied as families and strangers alike crowded together to witness history. No one wanted to miss the moment when Earth would rise from victim to warrior. At the largest spaceport, the first colossal warship stood ready, its hull gleaming silver and black, etched with the names of the fallen, engraved by the hands of volunteers, each letter a promise that their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Banners bearing the words, Operation Alien Extinct, stretched across towers while soldiers in armored exosuits marched in perfect formation toward the boarding ramps, their footsteps echoing like thunder across the launch site. The broadcast that once carried only terror now carried pride. Every screen on Earth displayed the live feed showing fleets preparing for launch. The same technology the Empire had used to humiliate humanity was now humanity's greatest weapon of unity. Families waved flags. Children painted stars and fire on their cheeks, chanting for victory. Crowds sang songs, not of mourning but of defiance, their voices rising together until the sound became a storm that reached into the heavens. Soldiers paused to look back at the people. Some raised their fists, others saluted. Their faces were set with determination, but their eyes revealed the weight of farewells. Many had hugged their loved ones one last time at dawn, promises whispered through tears, promises to return though all knew the war ahead might not allow it. Yet no one faltered because the memory of 99 million demanded courage, even when fear tried to steal it away. Engines roared to life, shaking the Earth itself. The sky blazed with light as the first warship lifted slowly into the air, followed by another, then another, each vessel a titan of steel and fire. climbing higher with trails of flame that painted the heavens. The crowd erupted into cheers and tears. Some fell to their knees praying, others screamed the names of the dead, as if calling them to witness the rise of vengeance in orbit. The fleets aligned their formations like constellations reborn, warships bristling with cannons and lances, swarms of drones glimmering like stars alongside them, space stations reactivated long dormant defenses, their lights flashing a signal across the void. Earth was ready, Earth was armed, Earth was united back on the ground. Leaders stood before their people not with speeches filled with politics but with words that echoed the spirit of the crowd. They declared that this was not only a war for survival but a war for justice, for freedom, and for the right of humanity to exist. In the galaxy, the departure of the fleets was more than the beginning of a military campaign. It was the rebirth of a species that had refused to die in silence. The Galactic Empire had shown them horror, but now it would see the full fury of a united Earth. And, as the last warship vanished into the stars, the people watching below knew in their hearts that the fight for vengeance and survival had truly begun. The war for survival had begun, and with Operation Alien Extinct, humanity stood united to prove that it would not be erased by the Galactic Empires. The fleets vanished into the black sea of the cosmos. Earth held its breath. The sky was empty again. Yet everyone knew the silence did not mean safety. It meant the beginning of a war unlike any in history. For the first time, the fate of an entire species would be decided not in one city or one nation but across the stars themselves. Humanity was no longer bound to Earth alone. They had stepped forward into the galactic stage, carrying both grief and fury as weapons. In hidden command bunkers, generals tracked the fleets through massive holographic displays, lines of light tracing their paths toward contested sectors of space. Intelligence agents intercepted alien transmissions, analyzing every code and symbol, searching for weaknesses. The Empire was vast, older than human civilization itself, but now its reign of fear faced a challenge. It had never anticipated a world of fragile beings who had chosen not to kneel. The soldiers aboard the warships trained relentlessly. Even as the stars shifted beyond their windows, they reviewed simulations, studied alien strategies, and prepared their bodies for battles and environments no human had ever survived before. Their quarters echoed with chants, their mess halls filled with stories and laughter that masked the fear beneath. Every soldier knew they were walking into fire, but none would turn back, because to turn back was to abandon the 99 million whose deaths demanded vengeance on Earth. The people did not return to ordinary life. Instead, they transformed their grief into fuel for the war effort. Factories worked day and night, churning out supplies. Families sent messages of love to the fleet's students, studied science not for personal dreams, but to strengthen humanity's arsenal. Even farmers in distant valleys dedicated crops to sustain the war machine. No life was untouched by the conflict. Every human heart carried the same weight of duty. The Galactic Empire responded with silence. No more broadcasts, no more taunts, as if waiting in the darkness to see how far humanity would go. Yet the absence of the enemy only deepened the resolve of the people. The lack of a visible threat did not weaken them, it made them stronger, because they understood the storm was coming, and when it broke they would face it head on. Historians would one day write that the massacre meant to shatter humanity had instead forged its greatest strength. What had begun as tragedy transformed into unity. What was meant to be submission became defiance. Every person knew the cost ahead would be unimaginable, but they also knew there was no greater cause than survival, and no greater honor than to fight for the future of their species. And so the story of Operation Alien Extinct did not end with the launch of the fleets. It began there, with a united Earth standing tall in the face of annihilation. The galaxy would never be the same, because humanity had risen from ashes into fire, and the fire was spreading.